Okay, here's the fourth and final video, and I'm going to pause between concepts just because then maybe I can get through more concepts as we are getting there. So number 14 is very straightforward. What is amniocentesis and why might it be completed? And so amniocentesis is the procedure where they take a needle and they use it to withdraw just a little bit of the amniotic fluid, and they take the cells from that sac and surrounding, and they are able to test it. Some people do this to explore possible genetic diseases of their infants and things like that. It's typically it is a very common procedure, not like super common, but it's done frequently enough. But there is still some risks in regards to it. Um, so it's made to it's a test primarily used to look for possible genetic or other defects that might be occurring. We also talked here about coronavirus sampling. There's no question regarding it, but it's just a procedure where they actually are taking the cells, not the fluid, and they're testing it mostly to see if there's going to be a risk for genetic defects or miscarriage. They are not. Um, I'm sorry. They both have a risk to cause miscarriage. So they are not done lightly, and there must be a concern for it to be done. Okay, I'm going to pause. Okay, so Unit 2, Concept 15, we are looking at some complications, mostly for the mother, that occur in pregnancy, and we have 3 here. I left off spontaneous abortion. That is just basically when the body aborts the baby, usually due to chromosomal abnormalities, but that is pretty straightforward and pretty well known. Hyperemesis gravidarum is basically an extreme form of morning sickness. Kate Middleton is a great example. I think Amy Schumer also, they talked about it in the news and in the media and all of that. And this is characterized by the women having severe, not like they cannot get out of bed, they're nauseous, they're vomiting, they lose weight, they get dehydrated. Some of them end up in the hospital with it, and it's just kind of like an extreme morning sickness is the best way to describe it. It's not super common, estimated to happen in less than 2% of pregnant women, but it can cause them risk because they're going into dehydration and other things that could impact the child, and it does give a slight but an increased risk of miscarriage or premature birth. And it can go throughout the whole pregnancy. Sometimes it doesn't, but for some of these women, it's the entire time, and it's pretty severe. Um, Ectopic pregnancy is when the zygote, so before it's really doing its attaching, gets attached inside the fallopian tubes instead of attaching to the uterine wall. This happens in about 1 in 50 pregnancies in the U.S., so it's not common, but it's not common. It can cause some pretty severe issues. There has been damage that have occurred to the fallopian tubes. Some people who have had ectopic pregnancies aren't able to conceive or have difficulty conceiving later because that fallopian tube was damaged to the state that they only have the use of the other fallopian tube, so it's only like 50% um, chance compared to both sides operating fully functioning. Um, you can have abdominal pain, you can have severe bleeding, nausea. People have been known to just kind of pass out and end up in the hospital um, due to these pregnancies because basically it's, this thing as it grows and gets bigger and bigger, I shouldn't call it a thing, as the the embryo is growing and becoming larger, the fallopian tube is not meant to house an embryo, and so it's extremely painful for the mother. Um, those ectopic pregnancies are not going to go full time, full birth. I've heard some talk about could they possibly move the developing embryo and all of that. I haven't I don't see that being a successful or needed things, but and a lot of times you don't even know it's there until it's so painful that it's gotta resolve itself in some way. Preeclampsia is probably the most common pregnancy complication that we see, also known as toxemia, and it can go to eclampsia if it develops too far. Um, and it is a rise in your blood pressure. You're usually considered that you have preeclampsia. I myself had it. Um, my best friend had it. I took care of when I was in the childcare. I knew several mothers there that had preeclampsia. The first early signs are going to be your swelling of your hands, your feet, your ankle, and all of that. They're going to watch you very carefully. Trying to keep your blood pressure at bay or in a decent range. Watching some other aspects in regards to your kidneys and all of that. But if it does move into eclampsia, it's been known to, well, in our book, it talks about it being the leading cause of maternal death in the United States. And so it can also have some complications if it's getting to the point where it's looking like it's moving from eclampsia to what we call HELP or eclampsia. Then it is going to cause, they're going to bring that baby early um, to make sure that the mother is okay. So you might have early birth, you might have low birth weights, premature births, and then, of course, stillbirths if everything is not caught in a good, ready, in a good fashion. You're usually, if you get to preeclampsia, you are being put on bed rest. There are sometimes medications that they can do to help manage some of the symptoms and complications from it. And like I said, if it's progressing and not either stalling out or reducing, then they will go ahead and either induce or do a C-section to address that. Okay, so let me go back. Pause. Okay, so for Unit 2, Concept 16, we're moving into Chapter 3 and looking at what is the title or a chapter? The newborn, the birth process in the newborn, right? Birth in the newborn. And so the first thing we're talking about is the stages of a vaginal delivery. The most probably common delivery still. C-sections are common, but the vaginal delivery is probably still the most common delivery in the United States. So you have the first stage, and the first stage is what most people kind of see in the movies and the shows as being, the dramatic rush to the hospital stage. Um, Trust me, for most people is not as dramatic, but it can be very dramatic as well if you are a quick birther. Um, but in that first stage, this is the contractions. This is the part that's probably going to take the longest. It's waiting for your uterus to dilate to the 10 centimeters. Your water is going to break during this stage as well. And you're going to get those contractions coming closer and closer together. Most people are not coming into the hospital till the contractions are coming about every 5 minutes. That's when you really want to be tracking them and bringing them in. But this is your first stage. So part of this stage is probably going to occur at home, and then part of the stage is going to occur in the hospital. It all depends on your birth story, right? We call them birth stories now. And I mean, frankly, for me, if both of the stages primarily occurred in the hospital for my daughter, I never actually started contractions, but my water broke. So they had to start contractions with her. And then for my son, he was what I call an eviction. And so he had to come out. And so he was induced. And so all of mine was in the hospital, but a lot of people do go into labor at home naturally and begin having those contractions and they get tracked, right? So once you hit that 10 centimeters, that's when the exciting stuff starts to happen, and that is when the baby is actually going to start its passage out of the birth canal. And the mom is going to start pushing. Pushing can averagely take anywhere from 10 to 40 minutes, just depending on the woman and her body. And so contractions are usually coming every 2 to 3. The woman's pushing with the contractions, hopefully with support of the medical staff. Um, so at this stage, that baby is pushed out and is delivered. So, and hopefully we're putting them right onto the chest of the mama because that is best practice that the mommy gets them right off the bat and makes that connection and bond to the infant. We find research has told us that that is very important. So people always get this confused if they go looking at random websites and they're not really looking at development. But the third stage, they'll put the third stage as the delivery of the baby. So the first stage is minor contractions, the second stage is pushing. That's not true. So the first stage is just the dilation, the second stage is the actual delivery, the baby coming out, and the third stage is the delivery of the placenta. So you got to stick around. It takes about 20 up to 20 minutes after delivery. The placenta is going to come out and all of that. And there is a lot of things in the media now. Placenta has some amazing nutrients. People do different things with their placenta. Different cultures do different things with their placenta. But that is the third stage. So the third stage is the delivery of the placenta or the afterbirth. Very important because if it doesn't occur, there can be issues. And so the doctor will need to make sure they go in, get it, and it comes out. And that can occur. So stage one, contractions and dilation to 10 centimeters. Stage 2, delivery of the child or the child coming through the birth canal. Stage 3 is the delivery of the placenta. So the next question is 2 reasons why doctors may encourage or do a C-section, a cesarean section on a mom. To have the babies delivered in that form or fashion. That's straightforward in our book on page 78. It could due to health problems of the mom that preeclampsia has gotten to some point. They don't think she would have the energy or ability to deliver for some reason. For example, there's been cases where moms have been in car crashes, gone into labor. They physically cannot deliver that baby. They are too injured, and so a C-section is going to be the resulting from that. If the baby goes into distress, this happened with my son. They were considering it. The doctor, it's actually a fun story. I won't tell you right now, but the doctor my doctor is very vaginal birth pro, and she's like, nope, this ain't gonna happen. But the nurses were ready to take me off to go to C-section because his heart rate kept dropping, and the theory and the belief was that the cord had somehow wrapped around his neck, and every time I contracted, it pulled the cord and dropped his blood pressure, my son's blood pressure. And so that was a sign of distress in the baby. If it was going to continue, they were going to get that baby out one way or the other. So if a baby's heartbeat, they are tracking that. They're checking the blood pressure, all sorts of things. They actually go in and attach these days a little monitor to the crown because they can go in and attach it to their crown after the water has been broken. There is not enough room for the baby to get through. This was also the main issue that was keeping him from getting delivered, that I was not dilating, and so I was stuck at like 9, a little less than 10, but not. I was at 9, but I wasn't reaching 10. And that's when my doctor said, well, no, we're going to make her 10. And so, but if there's just not enough room to get the baby out, the head's too big, the baby's gotten too large, the mom's birth canal is tilted in a strange way, and for whatever reason, that baby is not able to exit. So there are things there. That's another reason for a C-section. And lastly, the one listed here is the position of the baby, such as a breech. So the baby didn't turn. It's not head pointing down, which is what you want when you're delivering is head down. If it is bottom down or feet down, then you are going to have to do a C-section. The head has to be pointing down when delivery occurs. Okay, so I'm going to pause it, see if we can get one more. Okay, so number 18, Unit 2, number 18. Sorry, I'm talking fast. I got 40 seconds. Discuss 2 methods for assessing the condition of a newborn. The most commonly used method is the APGAR, and we'll see this on page 79, okay? So this is going to be probably the most frequently thing. And they're going to look at certain scores. And what you want is a score of greater than or equal to 7. 4 to 6 were considered low, and under 3 is critical. And it's doing some really quick visual and easy to do checks. That's the appearance, the pulse, the grimace, the activity, the respiration. The other option is the neonatal behavioral assessment.